Well, howdy there, folks. This is your host, ID Jester. Welcome back to another episode of Legions of War, a high fantasy card game of strategic and tactical warfare between races, being created and designed by myself, ID Jester. So, thank you if you've come this far. You must be interested a little bit, so hopefully I can continue giving you some more detailed information about the play of the game. So, in case you've missed the first couple episodes, basically, it is going to be 30 minutes game, 2 to 4 players, ages 13 and up. We're trying to create a game of quick playing tactical card game, easy to learn and understand. You can teach somebody in 5 minutes how to play. Hard to master because of all the different choices that you're going to need to make. And we're adding unknown elements to a card-driven game by using dice and the unknown of when an enemy card is actually going to be removed from the game, plus obviously being able to play cards from your hand at different times that can foil your opponent's plans. Of course, the goal of this series, again, very, very important. I can't stress this enough. The goal of this video series is to introduce players to the game, get them interested, and then obviously with some support we can contact some game developers and publishers and hope to one day get this game actually developed and published. So that is the goal of the game, the goal of this video series, and hopefully we can get that done. Of course, all rights are reserved by myself. No part of this publication may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopy, recording, and other electronic and mechanical methods without prior written permission of the publisher, which is me, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in critical reviews and certain other non-commercial uses permitted by copyright laws. So with that out of the way, we're going to look at a few things here in this episode. In the original episode, we kind of did an example without getting into too much details about the actual flow of the card game and how everything happens. Now we're going to look more specifically at that process so that you can understand the actual flow of the game and how everything is done. Hopefully you will watch all the episodes because there is going to be information in those episodes. So let's go ahead and get into it. So as I talked about in the previous episodes, everything is subject to being changed, altered. Nothing's set in stone at this point. And I've already had one major change from yesterday to today. After thinking about the situation with the attack type and the attack damage, I thought that it could be a little confusing for some players. We talked about that in the last episode. Attack type being melee or ranged, and attack damage being melee, ranged, or magic. I decided to make a change to that. So now the attack damage is going to be one of three different things. It's going to be either physical damage, elemental damage, or magical damage. So that will be a change. So now you will not see the same icons on both sides, and that can be kind of confusing to some players. So on the top right-hand corner now under attack damage, you will see you will either do physical damage, elemental damage, and magical damage. And of course that again is because some units might be resistant to physical damage, or they might take more damage against elemental damage, or whatever the case may be. The damage type can come into play on some of the units. So big change there, and I hope that change will actually make things a little bit clearer for people when they're actually looking at the cards. Unfortunately, I haven't changed all of the cards that we've used throughout the series, so you're just going to have to bear in mind that those haven't been changed yet on these cards during this episode. I'll have to do that later today. So we have physical, elemental, and magical damage. So most importantly is the rules for playing cards during setting up a fight. or setting up a battle. I'm not sure if I'm going to go with fight or battle yet, but I think I'm going to go with battle. That was another thing I was thinking about last night, was maybe switching out fight to battle, because some people might think a fight is when two units interact with one another. So I am going to change that for now. So rules for playing cards during setup of a battle. Alright, so the arrow is going to point to the first player from the location card. That is going to be the first player. So here's step number 1. So if we look at some of the location cards, obviously there are going to be randomly created by your 10 and your opponent's 10, shuffled up and then placed face down. If we just look at a couple examples here, you'll see if we flip this one up, the arrow is pointing to me, or down the screen at the player, whoever's to the south end here. And this card, if it was turned up, would face the north, or the opposite player up at the top of the screen, and that player would be first player. Each side, each unit set comes with a card that faces itself and a card that faces away. So that will determine who is the first player just by flipping up the next card in the location pile. So that's the first thing you're going to do. You're going to determine first player. Second step, the first player is going to play 1 or 2 cards. Or pass. I should actually put that in there because it might make a difference. So first player is either going to play 1 or 2 cards or pass. Second player is going to, actually, that might be a little more confusing because of step 4. So I'll just get rid of that. So first player is going to choose to play 1 or 2 cards. And by playing a card, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to go to the play field. Any card that they play, they might have a card in their hand that says, play this card and draw 3 cards. That is considered playing a card. There are advantages to knowing what your opponent's playing on the battlefield ahead of time. We're going to look at that in another episode. There's advantages to going first. There's advantages of waiting to see what your opponent does. Different strategies and such. So that's step number 2. First player is going to play 1 or 2 cards. So I can play a card that lets me draw 3 cards, and then I can play a card, unit card down on the battlefield. That would be 2 cards, and that would be the most I could play. Then the second player is going to play 1 or 2 cards. And then after that, you're going to continue doing steps 2 and 3 until someone passes. Once someone passes, the other player can play 1 or 2 cards, and setup for the battle is complete. So that's the process, or the rules for playing cards during setup of a battle. We're going to look at that here, and I want to keep these in this specific order. So just bear with me just a second here. So if this is the card that was flipped over from the draw deck of the location cards, you can see it's facing down, or we'll just assume I'm the player down in the south end. My opponent's sitting up at the north end. So we flip this up. This is the location we're going to be fighting over. It's the Swamp Hunt. When you win this location, you can choose 1 time to move an item from 1 unit to any other unit. So obviously, once I win this location, I'm going to put this in my side of the area, and then later on during our playthrough, I will be able to move an item from 1 unit to another. Notice it doesn't say from 1 ally unit to another ally unit. It says move 1 unit from 1 unit, move an item from 1 unit to any other unit. So I could actually take one of my opponent's items and put it on one of my heroes. Or if he plays a bad item on one of my guys, I can switch it and play it on from my guy over to his guy. So lots of variety with this. So it might be very important to get this. But anyways, excuse me, pardon me. If we look at, I'm the first player, so That is step number 1 we just did. Step 2, since I'm the first player, I'm going to play 1 or 2 cards. So in this case, I'm actually going to play, not that card. I'm going to play, I am going to play this card right here. I actually had the wrong card. And that is my first card. And then I choose to play a second card like this, and I'm done. And so it goes over to the next player, my opponent, and then he can choose to play 1 or 2 cards. So he decides to play this card here, and then decides to pass. I then decide to, I really like this location. I want to capture it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play 2 more cards. You know what? I'm just going to play 1 more card, and we'll see what my opponent does. Lots of strategy. We're going to get into that in the next episode. We're actually going to talk about some strategies and some tactical decisions and all that in the next episode. Just disregard these little hearts here for this time. That's for our next episode. Just move these down out of the way. There we go. All right. So I play my 1 card. I want to see what my opponent has. He has a few cards left in his hand. I have a few cards left in my hand. I don't know what trickery he has up his sleeve. So he decides to play this card and then the giant spider. And then it would go back to me because he has played his 2 cards. I then look at my cards. I could play these item cards. Again, playing a card, an item card. I could attach this item card to the knight here. Place it on there, but then it would give my opponent some extra information ahead of the battle time. I might just want to hold this in my hand and wait and see how the battle progresses before I risk it, because each card is very valuable and important. So I decide I'm going to pass. It goes back to my opponent. He can play, since I have passed, he can play 1 or 2 more cards, and that if he wishes, he's already got 2, so if he played another card over here, I probably wouldn't have enough range to hit my knight, and he thinks he has 2 swamp hags and spiders can take my 2 knights and my wizard, so he decides to pass. And that's it. The battle is set up, and then we are going to be playing out this battle and see how it goes and see who wins the fight. Or, I'm sorry, who wins the battle. I'm switching my terminology here in the middle. So that's easy. That's as easy as it goes for rules for playing cards during the setup of battle. Again, any card you play does not necessarily have to go in the play area. It might be an event or a skill that says, draw 3 cards, and you might play another one that says, look at 2 of your opponent's cards and discard 1 of them. And that could be the 2 cards that I play. And then I still don't have anything in the actual play area. So any card that you play down. Obviously, I can't play a item card down until I actually have a unit to play it on. So if I had no units down, I couldn't play an item card on. You can only play an item card when it's you're attaching it to a unit. It doesn't have to necessarily be your unit. It can be an opponent's unit. So obviously, you couldn't play a item card that way. So there's lots of different skills and lots of different items. We're going to look more specifically at that when that time comes in the video series. So that's pretty much it. This battle is ready to go, and now you just need to learn how everything operates. So as we talked about in our previous episode, there's going to be basically 2 attack types: a melee, which attacks an adjacent space, and a range, which attacks 2 spaces in either direction. And these are the base rules. Again, I can't stress this enough. All the rules I'm covering will be broken by units and their cards and such, just like we looked at when we looked at the knight here, who has lances who can attack an opponent that is up to 2 spaces away, and even though it is a melee unit. So this is obviously a special ability that overrides the default rules. So the rules I'm giving you are the base rules, and everything can and will, and specifically change the rules of the game to make that unit even more powerful and better than some of the other units. Alright, so let's talk about how the game progresses. So what's going to happen is, and I'm just going to offset these. I think players will tend to offset their side cards so it's easier for them to see which cards they played and their opponents played. So you can, I've obviously color coded them a little bit to make it easier for us. Anyways, so here's the way it progresses. You're going to have a number of spots based on the number of cards on the battlefield. It can be as little as 1 card, because somebody has to play a card to actually win the location or to start a fight or battle. And it can go up to as many as 20 spots, because both players have a maximum card size of 10. You could obviously get even more than that based upon, you know, if I had an ability to draw 3 cards, so that all of a sudden I got 12 cards in my hand, because hand limit's not enforced until the beginning of, or after the draw phase, which we'll talk about in another episode. This episode specifically, we're talking about how to play. So I would say normally you're going to have probably between 4 to 8 cards in the battlefield at any one time. 4 to 8 is probably going to be an average number of cards between you and your opponent. You can see right here we have 6 cards, and this is just the beginning step because we have lots of cards left in our hands to play. The only card we won't be able to play is like unit cards, unless I have a special ability that allows me to bring in unit cards. But we'll look at that when we talk specifically with an example next episode. Anyways, so much to talk about. Let's see. So play proceeds from the top, which is the closest. We're going to have a little counter here that says top on one side is going to have end on the other side. And you're going to have another counter that says end, and on the other side it's going to say top. So basically the progression is going to be, you're going to be moving from this spot to 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 the very last card. Then you're going to flip the counters over, so the end is going to go to top, and the top is going to go to end, and then they're going to do the same thing, but you're going to do it in reverse order. So this unit is actually going to get to go again. So you can see it goes once, and then it goes again, then it goes back, the chain back this way, and then once it gets to this end, or the first card, that first card's going to do the same thing. It's going to go at the end of the round. You're going to flip the counters back from end to top and from top to end, and then it's going to activate again and start the process back down this way. So when you go down and back up, that is one complete round, and that can be important because some powers and abilities might say after the second, or starting in the second round, this unit does something different or whatever. So a round is all the way through and all the way back. Now let's specifically look at the rules that can come into play when we are activating a spot. So I'm going to actually change that to activating a spot, because you're activating a spot and then there's going to be a card located with that. So the rule, pretty simple rules. Before activating a spot, the card owner can play cards. So for example, we're starting this battle. It's the red player's card, so the red player can play cards. So I might have a card that says, move this unit 2 spaces towards the end. Obviously this is the end, so I'm going to move it 2 spaces to the end and do whatever, blah blah blah. So whatever my card says. So I can activate cards. I can give this guy, at that point I can say, I'm going to play this Holy Sword on my knight. And this Holy Sword is going to give it Every time I roll a 6 during an attack, the knight is going to heal 1 wound. So now I've surprised my enemy by activating cards ahead of time that might foil his plans, but I didn't do it during the setup phase because I didn't want my opponent to know what my plans were. So disadvantages and advantages that bring in a lot of strategy and tactical decisions. After I play all my cards, then the other player can play his cards, any cards he has. He might have a card that says, wound this unit 2 wounds. So, I might put 2 wounds on this hero, or whatever his card has. He can play cards on it. Once we both are done playing all of our cards, we will then roll for a death saving throw if the unit needs it. So obviously this unit doesn't because he doesn't have enough wounds on it, but maybe my opponent played a card that said put 3 wounds on an enemy unit, and so he played that card on my knight, and now all of a sudden I do need to make a death saving throw. Death saving throws will determine whether or not the unit actually stays in the fight or not, bringing the unknown into the game. Death saving throws, you notice, happen before you actually activate the unit or the spot. So once I pass my death saving throw, I could take 100 points of damage. But this unit will stay in the fight until the next time I go to activate it, and it needs to make another death saving throw. So once it makes its death saving throw, it's going to do something. It's still in the fight until the next time it gets to activate. So that could be important for playing your cards ahead of time, because once it makes its death saving throw, it will stay in the fight until the next time you have to activate it. So when you activate the spot, you're going to do one of 3 things. You're going to activate the unit, you're going to delay, which does not count as an activation. This does not count as an activation. Or you can switch with adjacent spot with an ally unit, but this does count as an activation. So you're going to activate a unit, you're going to delay, or you're going to switch to an adjacent spot with an ally unit. Both activating a unit and switching count as that unit's activation. The only thing that doesn't is delaying. That does not count as an activation. And we'll give you an example of why you might want to do that here in just a second. Last rule is units can only activate until the reset at the top of the end counter. So you can only activate 1 time. If I had activated this guy and somehow he moved, switched spots with this unit, when the counter moved down, unless this guy has a special ability that says you can activate more than once per round, which this unit does not have that. When it got down here, he already activated once, he can't activate again. So the base rule is units cannot activate more than once in a round. You can only activate once per until you flip over the counter. So basically 1 time down and then 1 time back up. So 1 time during this, everybody's going to activate 1 time, and then you're going to flip these counters, and then everybody's going to activate 1 more time, and you're going to keep doing this round after round after round until one side is removed from the battle. That's pretty much the rules for activating a spot, but I'm sure there's some people wondering about this delaying and switching with an adjacent spot and what that does. So let's give you guys an example. I wanted to keep these units in this specific order because I wanted to show you. As we know, this knight here is a melee unit. It can only attack an adjacent unit. Obviously, the only adjacent unit is the wizard. He probably doesn't want to attack the wizard. And the wizard here actually has a ranged ability, which means he can only attack somebody that's 2 spaces away because he's ranged, and 2 spaces away would be the knight. Now, fortunately for the wizard, he has a special ability called Fireball, where he can choose an enemy at least 2 spaces away from the wizard. That unit and both adjacent units are attacked with a 3d6 3+ attack. So he could actually target this unit here and do damage to all three of these units, or he could target the giant spider and do both adjacent units, which would just be the swamp hag and the giant spider. But at this point, the knight is kind of left out of the cold. He won't be able to attack anybody, and because the wizard can actually attack anybody at least 2 spaces away, being adjacent to somebody else might not be where the wizard wants to be. So what can happen is when we go to activate this spot, the red player, since his card can activate, play any cards he wants, and then the blue player can do the same thing. And then once both players pass, it comes down to the red player deciding to do either activate the unit, delaying, or switching into an adjacent spot. So he could just switch with an adjacent enemy, which causes him to go over here. But remember, that costs an activation. So once he's done with his turn, that's all he gets to do. He doesn't get to attack then. He doesn't get to activate any of his special powers. Unless he's got a special power that breaks the rules, that would be the thing he gets to do, because he's not activating the unit. He's switching with an adjacent spot, which obviously was really stupid, because what's going to happen is this is then going to go over to this spot here. Actually, no, it would not, because this doesn't move, because the first thing you're going to do to move it is to see if this unit is activated. This unit has not activated yet. So this unit can then, it's going to then decide to either activate a unit, delay, or switch to an adjacent spot. Obviously, it doesn't want to switch to an adjacent spot, but now the red player is in a better position with his melee up here adjacent, and then arranged over here 2 spots away, so he could attack the swamp hag, or he could send his fireball way over here against the giant spider and the swamp hag. So by the knight switching positions, this counter doesn't move until the unit's been activated in its spot. So the wizard now can activate, it can delay, or it can switch. So it doesn't want to switch, it doesn't want to delay, so we would just activate the wizard and do an attack from the wizard to the swamp hag. We'll just assume that's what the red player decides to do. Once we're done activating the wizard, it then moves over here. Remember, the knight already activated. There might even be a little counter we might make for that. You're going to place on a unit that's activated so that we know. Obviously, it wouldn't be a little heart, but it might be something like a little activation token like this. And so we know that this unit's already activated this turn. So when the marker moves over to this side, this unit's already been activated, so it's then going to move on to this. But by by switching spots, he allowed the wizard to go, and he lost his attack. Now, let's start over, and look at the other strategy involved. We can delay, activate a unit, or switch. So when we start the game, back like we were, okay, we're rewinding time here, and this is our original setup. So the knight can actually delay in this case. When he delays, it does not count as an activation, so he will get to act later on in the turn or another time. He's just delaying. So once you delay, you move the counter over. The counter then goes to this spot, which is the wizard. The wizard then says, you know what? I am going to... He could use his fireball again, or he could switch with an ally. So, he decides to switch with an ally. Now this wizard has been activated for the turn, so he has a little counter on him saying that he's activated. But by doing this, we check the knight. The knight has not been activated, so now the knight can choose to either activate, delay, or switch. And by him delaying earlier and then having the wizard switch, we now have the knight attacking the swamp hag, and the wizard lost his turn. So 2 different ways to do it, depending on whether you want the wizard doing the attack to the swamp hag, or you want the knight doing the attack to the swamp hag, depending on who might have better advantages against the swamp hag, or whatever. Same situations going on down here as we progress through the round here. We get down here to the blue player's turn. Same kind of situation where he's got a ranged unit that's shooting 2 spaces away, which is his own unit, so he doesn't want that. And he's up adjacent to a melee fighter, so he doesn't want to do that. And his melee fighter is only able to attack adjacent. So he's kind of in a bad situation, probably because of card plays, and there will be units that when you put them on the battlefield, you can switch enemy units around, and all kinds of tactical great decisions you're going to be making. So we're back to the same situation here, where the swamp hag could delay. And once he delays, we move the counter over here. At that point, the giant spider decides to move adjacent, switch spaces with an adjacent ally, so he's going to switch spaces with the swamp hag. Remember, that does cost him an activation, though, so he will be activated. We recheck. The swamp hag has not been activated, so now the swamp hag can either activate, it can delay, or it can switch. Switch spots. Obviously, it doesn't want to switch spots. You could just keep switching spots back and forth, but then you're just wasting your activations at that point. So he will then activate and use his ranged attack, and now he can attack the knight. Once he finishes activating, bleep, it's the end, and we're going to flip the counters. So the end is going to go to the top is going to go to the end, and we're going to start another turn here, moving this way. And so the swamp hag gets to activate again, and it will attack the knight. All the activation tokens go away, and then once the swamp hag is done, it would go to here, and the giant spider would get to attack the knight. So by making that one simple move, I cost them one. It costs them one unit lost their attack. The giant spider here, when he switched spots, lost his attack, but he was able to get 3 attacks from this process to the knight by making that simple swatch. So that's pretty much it. You're going to start with the top. You're going to go all the way down, and then you're going to switch the counter and start again from one side and go back. One side down is a turn. If you complete a turn and then the back, you complete 2 turns, that equals a whole round. That completes 1 round, and you're going to keep doing that until one side has no units left on the battlefield, and the battle is won by one side or the other, and they have one of their 3 locations they need to win the game. So that's the basic rules of understanding the process here. I'm probably making it look a lot harder than it really is, because you're not actually going to have all of this stuff here. This is just for demonstration purposes up here at the top, just to kind of let you know. People are going to know, okay, this unit, I'm going to switch it. Okay, and now I'm going to delay. Okay, this unit is going to attack. This unit is going to attack, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to go a lot faster than what I am actually talking about here. I should mention that anytime a unit is removed, we'll say that, oops, what happened to our little counter? I don't know. Anytime a unit is removed, let's say the knight kills the swamp hag, ploof, he's dead. He's removed from the game. At that point, all units are going to then slide towards the counter. So you can see, we're sliding all of these units towards the counter. compressing them back in. You're not going to have open spaces between units. Usually, there are going to be things that are going to break that rule and everything, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, the counter, you're just going to put it on the end so you know that this is the last unit is going to move up. And same thing, if the Swamp Hag killed the knight here, bloop, then of course the wizard is going to move over there, like that. So you're just going to condense everything together, which can be an advantage and disadvantage, because now the Swamp Hag, the wizard is in a bad position where all of a sudden his ranged attack is on a knight now. He could choose to use his fireball, but he's going to be attacking both the giant spider and the knight. So lots of tactical decisions to be made. And of course, anytime a unit is removed, you're just going to condense it closer and closer and closer until one side doesn't have any units left on the battlefield. Now, hopefully you'll join us next episode. We're going to talk some strategy and tactical decisions about going first, what different things to think about, going second, what cards to play, and then kind of have an example of play where we're actually going to use a little dice roller to try and roll some dice out and show you how everything plays out. So be sure to check out that episode to come shortly. Until that time, again, I want to thank everyone for watching this, and hopefully you guys are enthused and excited about trying to get this created. I think it can be a great, fun experience for everyone. But we're going to need your support to get this done. We are going to need, to get one of the game manufacturers behind this project. So if you're enthusiastic as I am about this, maybe we can have that happen. So again, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.